Are you off today?
Yes.
All right. We thought so. We weren't sure. And two was like, is she actually going to attend the webinar? Was the question.
Yeah.
She's been promoting all week. Of course she is.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't miss it. I'm home. Right. I'm just like prepping my house to sell.
That's cool.
Which is a disaster, by the way.
We can promote it on today's webinar.
Yes, somebody would like to buy a house in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. Hit me up.
Do you get fiber out there? Like, you know, oh, never mind then. Like if you have fiber, I might have to do that. You know.
No, we're close to the lake though.
I need the internet. I have to have the internet.
I have really good cable though.
But is it fiber?
It's not fiber. Maybe eventually.
No. The coverage for rural broadband is abysmal. You'll never get fiber out there. I'm glad you got cable. That's
no. They've started to run it. I mean, I'm in a town, but it's a town of like 1,500 people.
Oh wow, dude! My graduating class was bigger than that in high school. Crazy.
My graduating class was 36 people.
Wow.
I could probably still name them in alphabetical order.
That's going to be a challenge for a drinking game one day. I'm gonna get it. That will happen. I want to see that happen.
Perfect.
Oh, that's my LinkedIn. Sorry, we're gonna kick this off. There's a live stream on LinkedIn if anybody wants to go on LinkedIn and live stream it. I'm promoting that to people already watching the video, so it's kind of useless. All right, we're gonna get started. Thanks for being patient, everyone, with us. Today we have our Blumira Security Advisor Series. I'm kind of laughing because we didn't update the title. We have new look and feel at Blumira here. But today we'll be talking about common external attacks and exploits and having some fun with Steve Reagan. I thought we were on with Seth Rogen today, so I don't know how we got stuck with you.
Bad luck, dude. I told you.
Yeah.
I told you it's bad luck. You didn't want me around. See, I show up and her Mac dies and everything else.
So Steve is, if everyone doesn't know, security researcher and technical writer at Akamai. Steve, if you want to add any more to that introduction.
If you actually know the name, you probably know me from like 15 years of journalism. I covered the security industry a lot. And then before that, I was in the security. So what I did was I left journalism and went right back into security. Apparently, once it's in your blood and that's all you've done most of your adult life, you don't escape the industry. It's just the way it is. So, hi, how are you?
Oh, that's the truth. I've seen a lot of people try and leave security and then come back because you can't get away from it, right? It's just overwhelming. And Amanda Berlin, thanks for joining as well, from Blumira, Senior Incident Detection Engineer, a book writer. If you ever want to get a good O'Reilly book, the Defensive Security Handbook, something like that.
That's right.
And hey, you're in another new book, right?
I am. I'm in and I think Steve, you're in it too, right?
Tribe of Hackers. Yeah, we're both in Tribe of Hackers.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Tribe of Hackers.
Love
Blue
Tribe
Team.
of Hackers.
Sweet. Yeah, those are fun books. I have two. I'll have to get that one. I think that's the third. Red Team, something else, and Blue Team.
There's the main one, Red Team, and then something about leaders or something, wasn't there? And then us.
Yep. It was a fun book. I was really flattered when Marcus reached out. It's like, hey, I want you to be a part of this book. And I was like, really? Dude, all right, cool. I like it. It's a good series.
Sweet. So let's kick off. And we're not talking about Blumira. I'm going to stop my screen. And, oh, man, tough room, Bill says. Thanks for the Q&A. Yeah, this is meant to be interactive as well as we're talking, right? So, yeah, I think the main thing here is we're talking a little bit about, external attacks and risk, right, to organizations. And so I think starting with Steve and Amanda, what's a typical external attack look like, and what should people be thinking about as it relates to external attacks?
I don't know if there's a typical one. There's a lot of different ones. Steve, do you think there's anything like in common with any of the ones that are currently out there? I mean, there's a lot that come from like higher risk countries, if you can call them that. But it's just as easy for those people to use a VPN and look like they're coming from the United States anyways.
Yeah, see, that's the problem when you go to attribute like sourcing. Most defenses and even most big infrastructures, they're only going to see the final hop. They're never going to be able to tell you where the attacker actually originated from. Yep. And so when you're looking at the final hop, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Like if you follow like criminal markets, you'll see that throughout the year, VPNs, proxies, and RDP connections from various locations, they come in flux. So you'll see like Europe's really big in May, but suddenly in October, it's all about Asia, and that's where all the connections are coming from. Well, you can correlate that to attacks, and you'll see those spikes move, you know, from place to place. So it's really hard to find that. I think if I was looking at commonality, what I see is a lot of scanning. You'll see it before it actually happens. You'll see these little one-off probes, and that's what they're looking for. Yep. You know, it's not a big massive sweep. It's usually just like a ping ping, knock knock, who's there? And that's where you'll start seeing a lot of the heavy hitting coming from down the line, because they're looking to see where you're weak. So that's they're checking for vulnerabilities that haven't been patched yet. They're looking for open access. They're looking for unguarded access. A lot of times you'll see probes from bots doing credential stuffing. So what they're doing there is taking previously leaked credentials, and they're hoping to see that somebody's recycling them. So they're going to try them against VPN ports. I mean, it's a gambit, but you'll see a lot of scanning up front. That's pretty common.
And I think that being so common is what makes a lot of people think that they should be alerting on it. Please never alert on scanning from the internet.
Yeah. All that does is burn you out, and suddenly when it goes ping ping, you're like, yeah, not today. Click.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What should people be doing then? Hopping right in there.
So you can automatically block those with not all firewalls, but the majority of the next gen ones, right? Using dynamic block lists, you can manually block that kind of stuff with different type of threat intel lists. Yeah, just don't. Alerting on it. I mean, people scan the internet every 5 seconds, so.
We actually know a couple of those people who scan the internet.
We do.
Funny thing. And the interesting thing about it is when you alert on every little scan you get, what you develop is this concept of paranoia. So now everything you see is a threat, when that's just not reality. And what happens is you ignore the ones that truly were a threat because you're so inundated with all this noise, you miss the signal. And so it's a thing to where, you know, like everything she said is 100%. You can use the ACLs to block them. You can use automatic blocking. I like to just black hole things. Like I don't even send a response back. Mm-hmm. I love messing with bot controllers to do that. I have a couple of web servers that are set up, and literally, even though the service is there, it just zoop, gone. Mm-hmm. Nothing on the response, because my paranoia is just like, if they see the response, then they know something's there. They're going to keep probing at it. If they don't get a response, maybe they'll think it's gone and they'll just wander off. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And so, I like it.
What do you, as you're looking at some of these different attacks, right? So starting with the reconnaissance scanning, right? And then you said a few different examples, which you said like, hey, seeing where you're weak, and then credential spraying. What are some of the other tactics people are using that you see in order to get access in that way, that people should be thinking about?
Well, it's not just credential spraying, it's spraying and stuffing. Mm-hmm. So spraying is when you got a list of passwords and you're gonna just try like admin, root. Stuffing is when I'm gonna try Amanda 1, Amanda 2, Amanda 3, and I'm going through my list of things that I know Amanda's already used. So I'm just going to try those. And I know Amanda's already used them because I've got the collection of all the compromised databases that have been leaked, where Amanda's email address is located. So I'm just targeting that particular account with as many related passwords as I can. You see a lot of that. But it's what happens after. When that's successful, that's where you see a lot of red flags and things you can hit on. So obviously you want to try and block the ability for an attacker to do wide credential stuffing, wide scanning. You want to lower your attack surface as much as possible. But you can't just assume that that's going to be your only defense or that it'll work 100% of the time. So when they get in, that's when you want to look at behavior anomalies. That's when you want to look at what people are doing to access files. Like, for example, is Amanda trying to hit resources she wasn't allocated for? Why? When did that start happening? Or did Amanda hit resources that she was never previously accessed to? Why? When did that happen? These are things you could look at to stand out that might give you an edge on catching an attack before it gets too bad. Because remember, security is a service industry. Our jobs are to get you back into business as quickly as possible, which means lowering the time to detection to as quickly as possible as well. And that's where you get the recovery process in. That's where table topping, which Amanda is extremely familiar with, is so important, because you can game these things out and develop plans to deal with stuff that's already happened, stuff that could happen, and think up evil, dastardly things that might never happen, but could happen, and plan for those too. Why not? Just go all out.
Never be too prepared.
Those are some good recommendations. I'm going to launch a poll on some of this topic. So what remote security concerns, I probably asked this wrong, concerns you the most? I have reconnaissance scanning. I threw credential spraying and stuffing together. Vulnerability exploits, APT, got to throw that one in there, and misconfiguration. So I got a few in there that we can ask. And then we can see what people respond to. Which is great. Hey, so talking about some of the mitigating controls, what are some of the best mitigating controls in place to stop remote attacks?
Least privilege.
Thank you.
Hey, and
least privilege is number one.
What's that mean to you folks? Because I don't know if everyone on the call might have the same definition.
Least privilege is when the admin says no. So
for me, at least from an external perspective, it means like, well, I guess segmentation's separate, but not everything needs to get to the internet. The internet doesn't need
surf the web on my domain controller.
It's access everything. No. which you can do in a lab. Just don't do it on your prod stuff. Not letting everything out, not letting everything in. I mean, the amount of people that use inbound access control lists and not outbound is staggering. And then properly segmented networks. A lot of people don't have DMZs. Just like, sure, there's a firewall separating these and this, but it's not like there's no segmentation between what's on the internet and what's not.
So I got some of our poll back, and I think those are good recommendations. I think
Mitten says hi.
Two-factor authentication is the other one.
Yes.
Number one, people are concerned about misconfiguration, and I think that's like, it's good that people are saying that, because I think a lot of people overlook that. Oh, what a cute kitty.
That's Mittens.
Which is the case, and I think I saw this a lot of times as well, is that people a lot of times buy a lot of the right prevention tools. And I think when I was at Duo, that's an example where two-factor and Duo are extremely useful. But when you don't implement them across all your stack in all the places it needs to be, or when you create bypass codes or allow users to bypass and forget about it, right?
Yeah, my favorite two-factor story is someone implementing not Duo, but another two-factor thing, where you didn't need a two-factor code, you didn't get a push, all you did was got a call from a phone number and you could hit the pound key. And so there were groups of people that would just use the same office number, and their office admin staff knew if they ever got a call from this place to just hit pound. So it was
Good
definitely
practice.
definitely two-factor. It was definitely two-factor auth.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, it wasn't secure at all because they, they weren't verifying anything.
I think too, it goes to that point of like, also a lot of times this is user created, because living at Duo, you could actually do that with Duo as a user in some cases if it wasn't configured the right way.
So misconfiguration, even on two-factor.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of in that misconfiguration side, right? There's a ton of room for error. And to be honest, most products are not enabled with the security by default. And I think a good example is like even a lot of the SaaS products you buy nowadays, you don't even get security features unless you buy their enterprise version.
Right.
Is an excellent example of that, which I think that vendors need to maybe reconsider that. Maybe the security feature shouldn't only be available via your premium package, but hey, it is a driver to buy it. So
it is.
It's interesting. Vulnerability exploits. We had 3 people vote, and then credential spraying and credential stuffing. So hey, the other thing I think is like, so we have the external attack surface, and reducing attack surface is a big deal there. You mentioned segmentation. And putting some of those controls in place, right? And I think Steve, there's some things in regards to Akamai, right? That you guys are doing within your product, reverse proxy there, right? That I think is doing a lot of reducing at least the attack surface, right?
I can confirm that we work to reduce the attack surfaces. I can't get into how we're doing that though.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, typically a reverse proxy, which I think Akamai might be associated with, is another example of a good way to minimize or reduce risk.
I think that's a novel idea.
All right.
Think of that and actually make it part of a product. Wonderful idea.
Awesome. Hey, so going from the external attack surface, the whole concept of, and I was looking up, because I do marketing, of course, right? What everyone's searching for search term wise, and ransomware is up there as far as security terms this year. Another one is the dark web. And to be honest, yeah, it's because everyone's at home and they're like,
dark
I want to go in this crazy place and see what's really going on, right?
Is it the dark web or the deep web?
Oh gosh, the search term is dark web.
It's
doot. We could give it some other nicknames. Deep web.
Deep web is something that people say.
Yeah, I'm more or less curious, right? I think you have some experience with this.
I live on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, right? What's that look like, and should companies really be concerned about it?
So I'm going to be snarky. It looks exactly like the internet you're used to already. It's amazing how that works.
They use IP addresses?
Yeah.
It's just, no. It's just
everything.
It's just darker.
Yeah.
Everybody uses dark mode on the dark web.
That's exactly what it is. Everybody uses dark mode as a theme. There is no light color allowed. Whenever the only problem I have though is the only font allowed on the darknet is actually Comic Sans. So you get used to it after a while.
Yeah, it's very painful.
Yeah, it's frustrating at first. The interesting thing about it is, jokes aside, it really is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's just a separate internet that's not even hidden. You can access the dark web. You just need Tor. And it's not like you can't find it. So there's the difference between the spooky, scary dark net that you hear about all the time in the news and the actual like deep web are private networks. These are invite only places. You don't know the address. The address isn't indexed anywhere. You either know where this forum is, or you know where this merchant is, or you don't. It's that simple. And a lot of these places, where you see a lot of the heavy crime go on to, they're invite only. You have to be vouched. You have to have a reputation. You have to have credibility to get into them. When you see the dark net and the dark web in the news, when you see it in reports, these are the public areas. These are the areas that anybody can register on. So every security company on the planet probably has somebody in a dark net market right now. Tons of researchers are everywhere. That's to be expected. But what a lot of people don't realize is by the time, and I'll use the name of a dark market that actually just went under about a month or so ago. By the time a product hits Empire, for example, it's already been churned and burned by actual criminals who are using it for no good. And by the time it reaches that, everybody's gotten what they want out of it, and now they're letting everyone else get a hold of it. And that seems like it makes it less of a threat, but that's where you're wrong. Because when you have a small group of people doing something versus a massive audience of people doing something, you have to contend with both threats. And one is sort of slow and low, and you have a chance to fight against it. The other is constant, consistent, and it's coming at you from every direction. So you really want to pay attention to that. My beef is the services that consumers are offered where they threaten them or scare them with, we're going to find you on the dark web and we'll protect your information when it goes out there. A lot of that stuff doesn't really help the consumer long term, because by the time these companies find it, it's already been abused. And unless they're doing something else on top of scanning and locating this data, then by the time I get this report, which by the way, because of plenty of data breaches, I have all this darknet monitoring, all these free credit monitoring. By the time I see this report telling me that my data was on the dark web, it's already been used. It did me no good. So that's my beef with all of that. But to answer your question, sorry, I went way too long on that. The darknet is exactly what you think it is. It's just something that not everybody can get to, but it's the same internet that you already know.
Yeah, and Scott made a good point. Security vendors use that to drive fear.
Yes.
So people end up buying whatever product they're trying to peddle.
I think on that note, I commented about this earlier, Steve, before we started. I found it interesting that I saw a requirement of a customer saying we need dark web monitoring, right, for credentials, and I kind of laughed at it because I'm like, if your credentials are already out on the dark web, like you should have mitigating controls like TwoFactor. Is what's important. Password rotation might be another way to help with that as well.
Honestly, everyone should just assume their credentials are out there.
Yep. Yeah.
Just blanket assume they're out there, and then now what do you do?
So it's really interesting. It isn't just credentials. Like when we're talking about actual information that's out there. What's funny is over the last couple of months, especially since the lockdown and the pandemic, criminals have taken to acting like data brokers. So we all are aware that data brokers exist, and they sell your personal information that's been collected from websites to other data brokers who then sell it to other data brokers. Criminals are doing the same thing. They're harvesting all of this information that's freely available. They're harvesting all the information that comes from the data breaches, and they're compiling actual dossiers on people, including their habits, what they like, what they don't like, what possible means of phishing are. So like they know what lures to use against you. Think about that. They're compiling docs that are mirrored to what the legitimate marketing industry uses to know what lures are going to work against you during phishing. And if you think they're not doing that for criminal enterprise targeting actual corporations, you're wrong. They absolutely are. It's not just the consumers they're going after. Remember, your employees are consumers. What works for them at home will work for them at work as well.
I think that it's kind of funny in running at Blumira and also at Duo, multiple different parts of the business, the marketing game, right? Because in reality, it's the same as phishing. It is almost an identical function of you're trying to build trust with someone so that they will give you something or explore your product or service, right? In that case, like you're not doing anything different. You're just in that case doing it fraudulently, right? And not providing something of value. And so it is amazing. It's like, man, these are all just great product marketers. Are the ones that are winning, right? Are the ones that are able to understand the people on the other side and product market to them properly, right?
you have no idea how spot on you are. It's scary how real and targeted you are for that. I literally just did a talk the other day where I was explaining that the criminal underground, the criminal economy mirrors the legitimate world's, like the legal economy, 100%, down to the fact that they do actually have PR and marketing people working for ransomware groups and malware groups and things like this, who hype their services and their successes. Like literally, they have customer service people, they have developers, they have QA, they have back-end support, they do contract hiring, marketing, all of that stuff's done. In fact, you and I were talking before we hit record. I was telling you about the marketing pitch I got for this new service on what happens after malware infects a system. And I'm looking at the website right now, and literally all this thing does, it's a collection of logs that came off an infected machine, and they're selling the logs. They've already parsed the information they need from them. Now they're dumping the whole log and selling it off. This particular log sells for $14. And if I look at it, it comes with 7 passwords, 6 crypto wallets with passwords, and a YouTube account. That's what they're selling. So think of this. This is a person's crypto wallets are going to be compromised. Their YouTube account's going to be compromised. And what happens is when they compromise stuff like that, they upload videos that do promotion for whatever they're wanting to do, and they keep it hidden and just share that link. So if you don't know the link, you're not going to see it on YouTube's like index. You have to go to it directly. They use that for marketing, publicity, things like this all the time. We've got another account here, and this one's targeting Amazon. So they're going after retailers. Like this service exists. Here's the thing. This isn't on the dark web. This is actually, if you knew the name of this website, you can Google for it right now and find it. Obviously, I'm not going to teach anybody how to find this thing or what it does, but it's there. It's in the public. It's not being hidden at all. That's how brazen they can be with this stuff.
I do think more or less education of your employees is particularly important, right? On some of these topics. I think it's specifically with phishing, right? Is normally the main place where your users can be a big value in that regard. There was a question, and I want to go back to it. Bill had asked a question a little bit earlier about attack surface and this concept of hybrid attack surface. So moving away from dark web, which we've been talking about, back to attack surface a bit. And I think the idea or concept, right, is an organization is going to have many different attack surfaces. And I think what I've lived and breathed is like that becomes particularly true when we're talking about SaaS services, right? And I think like a lot of the excitement around SaaS is the fact that when you're using a SaaS application, I'm not going to categorize infrastructure into this, but essentially there's not much more than access control for users typically, and then API security that you need to be thinking about. You're more or less trusting the vendor to do all the other things from a security perspective, which has a lot of benefits because most organizations wouldn't be able to put the controls in place themselves that a SaaS service does, right? And so I think that's where, when you're talking about attack service, identity and single sign-on become extremely important as it relates to a hybrid attack surface. And then the whole aspect of cloud infrastructure is a whole nother aspect of there's benefits, but also risks, right? And we kind of see that, like, you didn't see people often putting SIFs on the internet, but you see them put an S2 bucket out there. Maybe it's a little bit too convenient to be able to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Hybrid attack service.
It's
Sorry,
getting a
I
little
went
bit
on
better.
there for
And the other thing with no, you're fine. Well, the other thing with hybrid environments is when I think it mentioned it in the question, things like acquisitions, and you have a parent company and a sister company and all of these other, you might have 5 security groups underneath one umbrella, trying, like, maybe one of them has 0 goals and they're not very great at doing security. Well, the next one is. So you know, your sister company could be one of your biggest threats because they have everything on the internet, but you're required to have people authenticate to it or something. So it's yeah, that kind of hybrid environment too is difficult to navigate. Yeah, it just depends on what you have to work with. You have to have a lot of logging if you can't put in place the good defensive controls that you need.
I think the other thing, and I mean to hit on both your points, there have been examples in the news of company A acquired company B and company B's data breach. Ta-da! But the other thing is, and I see this a lot when looking at the aftermath of an incident. I think a lot of people, when they get into the hybrid environment situation, they want to defend it and protect it like a traditional, I've got servers in my closet network. And that's just not how it works when you're distributed like that. You can't. There's lots of overlap, don't get me wrong, but trying to do the same thing over and over across multiple infrastructures and platforms, not happening. You'll run into more problems. And what'll happen is you'll miss something. And it's that little crack, that little something, that's where the problem will come from. In fact, you mentioned the buckets. Most times the buckets themselves would be adequately defended from a straight on attack, but they left their permissions open for scanning, which is how they find it. And then once the scanning's there, read is still available. A criminal doesn't have to download your database to compromise your data. They simply have to read it. That's all they need. And for most of the buckets, reading is everything that's happened.
It's interesting from attack surface. And I think it's interesting the vendors, like over time they respond. I think a good example was like GitHub. You know, GitHub originally, everyone was accidentally publishing their AWS keys to GitHub, right? I don't know if that was what, 2 or 3 years ago. That was
last week. What?
Yeah, but well, I think though GitHub since, right, has essentially put controls in place that work relatively well. That
they do, but it still happens. Unfortunately.
Yeah. From time to time, it happens a lot less, I think, right? Than what it has in the past with the controls. But yeah, definitely, these are the sorts of things that change when you're talking about cloud infrastructure. And starting to leverage these different tools. And that's an example of like, well, now you're using a management tool for your code and ending up making mistakes on how that should be published or managed. So it's good. Elections, we need to talk politics.
All right, I'll see you later.
Put your comments on how you think the debate went. No, I'm joking.
Nope.
I have a fly. Do you want to fly?
There was a bee in here earlier.
So it was really funny. I went downtown and voted early, and it was an hour and a half, like an hour to get through that line. It was crazy. So many people down there.
Bill said we can't talk about politics. Sorry, everybody. We're joking.
Thank you.
On the election side, though, not politics aside, right? You know, what do you I've talked to a few different people, but is there anything that you expect from an external perspective as far as over the next couple months, right? That we're going to see as it relates to election meddling and or remote attacks, right? We're not going to talk about candidates or sides or any of that stuff, right?
I mean, people. What's that?
You're going to see that scanning, though.
Yeah, and people using it for phishing attacks.
Lures, campaign-based lures are going to be very popular over the next month or two.
I think that as well. It's like the donation aspect. I just see all these donation links out, and like I was promoting myself, and I'm like, how do I actually know where this money's going? Dude, there's the lawnmower. Sorry.
You called it.
I called it.
Said he was going to show up. So for those of you in the lobby, before we started going live, he and I were talking, and he mentioned that he was worried the lawnmower guy was going to show up while he was doing this. And he was 100% correct. That's exactly what happened. He showed up, waved, and started the lawnmower.
That's funny. We're good. Yeah, we were talking about the targeted attacks as it relates to the money. Yeah, I personally, it's like, yeah, you know, promoting these links and saying, hey, go make some donations. It's like, I didn't look at the links, right? I don't know where that train of money is going on is kind of the reality, right? There is, you know, now that you think about it, it's like, yeah, the potential, right? And we're talking about billions of dollars dumping in, money wise. So pretty interesting to look out for. Do you think, or have you seen people targeting employees or businesses on that front?
Yes.
What's the tactic? Just donate?
It's not even just donate. It's just mentioning it in the subject line, or maybe the first sentence or two in the email is enough to get their attention. They get them to click the link. So once they click the link, and then at that point, it's just up to whatever the campaign's wanting to do. And I mean campaign as in criminals phishing campaign. Some are wanting office credentials, so they'll drop you onto like a fake Microsoft login portal. Some are wanting banking credentials, so they'll direct you to that. Some are looking for other general credentials, so they'll create like a stand-up website that's acting as a portal dump for whatever information they want to collect. It just really depends. But usually when you see it, it's the subject line and like first couple lines of the email, or sometimes they'll embed a picture to kind of match with it. And the goal is to spark outrage. So they usually pick subject lines and content for the lure itself that's going to make you angry, no matter where you sit on the spectrum. And the goal, again, is just to either get you to click on something, or if there's an attachment, to get you to open it, which is really bad, because if you open it, well.
And I mean, earlier you talked about how similar criminal enterprise is to normal everyday marketing stuff too, right? Same thing with politics.
Yep.
If you look at, you know, political wording and tactics, and I mean, it's kind of the same as phishing.
It is.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, one of on the product marketing side, one of my mentors told me, like, one of the best things you can do as an early stage company is to take a side and make people excited and passionate about it, or get them to be against you. And the whole reason why is it sparks emotion, right? Like what you're talking about, gains people's interest when you do things that are somewhat controversial, like building a startup in a garage. I'm joking.
As his garage.
Right.
It's kind of funny. I always go back to this joke, but at Duo, when we were early stage and we were only like, you know, 10 people, everyone would joke that we were 2 people in a garage. And now at Blumira, I don't have to joke. I'm just like, yeah, we're a startup in a garage. We're later stage, a little bit later stage than that, but it is kind of comical and funny.
When you build your new corporate headquarters, you need to make your corporate headquarters a giant garage. Giant garage.
Genius.
That's a good idea.
Just like in Silicon Valley. Like the little garage is inside the bigger garage.
Oh wow! Was that in the show?
And then everybody's office is like a mini garage. Yes, that would work. That would so work.
Fun.
And Garage Sports Inc. would love you. They would get so much business out of that building.
Yeah, the next thing that's going to happen after the lawnmower is behind me. The kids are going to come into play because they have break, and they'll start swinging on a swing. So APTs and 0 days. Hey, should everyone be worried about those? Because that's the top threat and the most exciting thing.
I'm triggered by that question.
No,
we talked about it last week a little bit too.
You put that question in there just to mess with me. Why would you do that?
I find it kind of interesting, right? When I get on a call with a customer, and that's the first thing that they're most concerned about, right?
There's a very, very small percentage of people that have to worry about that.
I have like this really cheesy line that gets played out, but it's, if you're being targeted by a nation state, just accept it. Let it go. There is absolutely nothing you can do with an adversary that has unlimited resources and unlimited time and simply just wants you. That's all they want. You're done. There's nothing you can, I don't care what product you have. You can have all the blinky boxes blinking in different patterns. You can have all the pretty colored cables. You can have a fleet of 1 billion people working your security department, and you're still going to lose. It's just reality. It's easier to be aware of the fact that nation-based adversaries exist and that they do operate, and to look at your attack surface and look at your risk model and your risk profile and find out if they even apply to you. Do they even apply to that? And if so, what are some compensations you can take that would help you address such attacks? But to just blindly worry about the big boogeyman of the day, whichever nation we want to talk about at the moment, or whatever fancy name we want to give to the cuddly bears of an APT group, worrying about that all your life doesn't get you anywhere, and it doesn't actually help your security program at all.
Yep.
Good advice.
Ditto.
I've seen some. It's funny, even before ransomware really became a thing. Like, I've had some interesting conversations. I'm not going to name who or why, where like literally organizations are just paying a quote unquote ransom so these nation states don't hit them. And the amounts of money were shocking, right? In those cases, and in that case, it is about funding, right? And it's crazy to think that that's how the world operates. I think it might operate a little bit less nowadays. That was like 3 to 5 years ago, but maybe not so much. In the instance of ransomware is a even more common example in businesses nowadays of that pay to play. It'll be interesting to see with the government, right, with some of the new regulation around ransomware and payments, how that has an impact on the industry as well.
I think what's going to be interesting about those regulations is the first time a company is like sanctioned or fined because they paid a ransom. I want to see the lawsuit that comes out of that. I want to watch what the courts do with it, because there's no way that the company is just going to accept those sanctions without filing a lawsuit. That's why they have cyber insurance. That's why they're, doing the payment to begin with, because they had to recover critical assets or what have you. Like, there's a lot more to it than just blanketly writing a policy and says, if you pay the ransom, we're gonna fine you and we're gonna make you pay all. No, you can't just blindly do that. There's going to be a lot of fallout from that the first time it actually goes into effect, so to speak.
Wait, hey, so you brought this concept of cybersecurity insurance up, so I can just pay that and I don't have to put any of these controls in place, right? Better approach.
Here's the problem. Read the fine print in that insurance, because there are a lot of policies out there that if you didn't take what they call reasonable protection steps for protection, then you're on the hook for whatever that payment is. The policy won't pay out. And here's the funny thing: you don't get to set what reasonable is. They do.
Yeah, it's very similar to GDPR, right? From a fining perspective. And yeah, I was joking sarcastically. Hopefully everyone heard the sarcasm in my voice on the cybersecurity insurance. Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see that industry develop as well. Because from what I've heard and from who I've talked to, the insurance companies are freaking out because they have no idea how to assess risk. And so essentially it is going to come down to probably things like NIST 800-171, CMMC, and other frameworks, right? That it's like,
yep,
you have to meet these controls, and if you don't, you're not insurable.
What worries me about that? If that's the way it goes, then that just means you're going to get more of the same, to where companies are buying products and services just to check a box, but not really using them or leveraging them to their actual spec. And that flusters me whenever I see the aftermath of a breach or something like that. And it's like they had the ability to protect themselves against this, but it wasn't implemented correctly, or it was misconfigured, or it was just set there to pass compliance. And it's frustrating, but unfortunately that's reality. That is, I guess, for lack of a better term here, that's accepted risk. They put it in, they knew it wasn't being used correctly, but it was accepted risk, and off you go.
I think I am seeing a change this year in a lot of customer behaviors, where they are understanding now that security and compliance are not one and the same, and that they need to take each of them independently seriously, which is a good sign. Not everyone. I mean, I've had some calls where the person's like, I mentioned this before on the call, where they're like, yeah, a vendor told us that we couldn't use a VPN anymore, so we just put RDP externally on the internet, right? so we could meet their requirement.
Wow.
And that's not like, that's, you know, of course, right? Like that's the opposite of the intent of something like compliance. And behind that, when they got educated, they're like, well, yeah, we don't really care about security. So yeah, there is a shocking
Physically
aspect
painful.
of, yeah,
I'd have cried.
Hey, no shame here. Like, tons of customers have RDP and SMB and other things open they don't realize. Right?
No, I'll definitely shame them.
Yeah, they
The
can't.
shame, yeah, the shame is in that
Yep.
when they were educated, they still were like pleaded
Right.
ignorance that it wasn't,
Right.
that there's no security risk. Right?
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and I think the thing there is, it's like, well, they're putting all their employees at risk, right? Even if, you know, even if they're a manufacturing company, it's there's more things than really they're thinking about it as an organization in those instances. That's pretty sad, right?
It is.
What's your shame game, Amanda?
Oh, wait. What do I cast shame upon? Or I'm shameful for a lot of stuff, but I don't have RDP on the internet.
I mean, how often are you in a position where it's just like you got to shame someone into doing something from a security perspective?
No, I never. I mean, I can't do that. That's not very professional to shame somebody. I can do it like anonymously, like on here, because I'm not specifically shaming anybody. But I'm not gonna be a dick.
I did it once as a reporter.
Did you?
There was a company that had a S2 bucket that was exposed and had a lot of sensitive data in it. And I was like, I need you to, you know, hey, this is happening. You need to get it fixed. This is type of data being exposed, you know, get this, you know, patched up and secured. And they're like, nah, we're good. We know what we're doing. I'm like, cool. Here's what's going to happen. This is going to be a headline story tomorrow. I'll give you 24 hours to fix it or I start writing. I don't need your commentary. I've already got the email exchange from the last week that you've said enough. Let me know what you'd like to do. They fixed it. I shamed them.
No, that's good. We're getting some good commentary, and I wasn't looking at the questions.
There's a lot. There's a lot in there.
Oops.
We all get clickers for the doors. I think that was regarding my mower, probably in my garage.
Yeah, our garage door.
And Bill's agreeing, unless you are a direct target, APT, nation states, right? Like much less a priority than misconfigurations, out of date, unpatched things. And I think like it's kind of interesting. Like when we deploy our product, for instance, with customers, I'd say 50% of the time we uncover misconfigurations, open ports, all that fun stuff. So legitimately, that is the number one problem I see. And then second is the reconnaissance password stuffing, spraying type of stuff is very, very common from a tactic perspective. And then Ryan says good security basics raise the bar for APT too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, and I think a good example is patching, right? Keeping up to date.
Patching, and the interesting thing about patching is, and we've seen this over the last couple of patch cycles from Microsoft, adversaries immediately started scanning the internet for like the CVE of the day and went after them. I think No Log On is a really good example of that. Like
the Citrix vuln that came out.
Yeah, right.
Holy crap.
Waste no time. We're talking a matter of hours. That stuff is already out there.
Yep.
That's normal.
Yep. It's a reality. Ryan says get more bears with honey than the honeybees, or than with bees. Sorry. Good comment. Yeah, I think that ties also to like the concept of honeypots, right?
I have one of those.
Is it on the internet or is it internal you're talking about?
Honeypot? It's on the internet.
Cool.
We have them everywhere.
It's the only way I know what, so like I can see what passwords are being tried against various services. It's how I track what's popular, what the bot of the day is doing.
Mm-hmm.
What's popular these days?
It's still RDP. They're absolutely loving the RDP. No
what about passwords?
Passwords? Dude, I swear, like right now, if you go to, I think it's like default docket, you know, the website that lists all the default passwords for every router known to man. That's the list they're using because all of these are default passwords for routers and gateways.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks to me like they're just trying to build a botnet, but that's what's been hitting me for like the last 48 hours. It's just that stuff.
Once you go below that list, it's probably like Trump.
I
Winter 2020.
Yeah.
Winter.
Yeah. Give a coin. Give a coin was a password I did see right around when Witcher was coming out on Netflix.
Nice.
Early on in the pandemic, variations of the word COVID were all over the place. Like that's what they were going for. And they were also doing a website scanning for WordPress vulnerabilities. And they were searching for folders and subdomains that had COVID in it. So it looked like they were trying to capitalize on companies that were setting up special COVID portals, which would allow them to hijack said portal and either include information that was false, external links that were malicious, what have you. Because if they can control your website, they can pretty much control everything. So
have the I assume the since we've gotten past that sensational period, the COVID attacks probably aren't working as effectively.
Oh no, they are absolutely working just fine. The COVID phishing is still all the rage. Except, so here's the thing: when you talk about COVID phishing, there are some kits out there that have replicated government websites related to COVID, but most of them use COVID as the lure. And then when you click on it, it's Microsoft phishing. They're looking to get your Gmail credentials, your Office credentials, things like this. That's what they're going for.
You know what? If I was running a phishing campaign right now, you know what I would do? I would literally target based on people with kids and act as their school, because I get like 20 emails a day.
Yes.
From like 40 different addresses, right? Sorry, if anybody on this call wants to start a phishing campaign. It's actually my side job, so I'm gonna launch one tonight.
It's already been done, Bubba.
Are people doing that now?
Yeah, I caught one of those the other day, and they sent it to me talking about both the boys. And what I thought was really funny is my kid's been out of high school for a long time.
Oh.
And I'm just like, oh, well, I responded back, please tell me more. They conversed like for a couple minutes, and then they sent the link. And when I went to the link, it was already dead. So obviously they had been working the scam for a couple of people, and it got reported. But yeah, they mentioned my oldest son, who has graduated in 2005, a while ago. I don't even remember when he graduated. Like it was more than a decade ago. Like,
hey, and I'm kind of curious if anybody on the call too, if you put in comments or Q&A, if there's any attacks you've been seeing that are unique. We have some other comments with Scott around instant response plans and insurance.
Yep.
As well, right? And I think the in bill as well, a lot of emphasis around like, yeah, you're still responsible when you have cybersecurity insurance, which we all agree on. And your responsibility to stay secure. And then it looks like some sort of supportdesk.com phishing scam.
Actually, I was seeing those last week. What they do is they have an RNG that creates this silly little domain, and it's SEU, a random string of numbers, supportdesk.com. And what they're doing is blasting that out, telling you that your email account's expired or it's about to be suspended, or that you've got unread emails or an important document, there's a problem with your password, whatever they can do to trick you into thinking it's a support related email. They're blasting that out to Office 365 holders, like corporate accounts.
Crazy that Microsoft hasn't solved for this problem.
There is. So here's the thing. There's no real solve for that. And the reason why is because of the nature of the internet. You can't just immediately block sus domains. I mean, like you can vote them off the ship, but you can't like just immediately block them outright, because there are some people who actually have pretty shady looking domains that are completely legit businesses. And I saw you laugh, Amanda. You got that joke.
I'm very proud of you that you dropped sus in this.
Are you talking like Blumira.com?
I mean, here's the thing. Anybody that didn't know you that, what if that pattern of letters actually from a regex or something somewhere was flagged as domain? Would you want Microsoft to immediately block everything from your domain? No.
Oh yeah, I think, and you're completely right, which is like it also has an impact on business in general. that the barriers, and we're talking about multiple barriers here of like, well, yeah, you raise the bar if you're a new domain. Now it makes that hard for you to look like a legitimate business. You raise the bar on compliance. That means you have to meet this stuff in order to even sell your product, right? It is kind of an aspect of like, there's a balance with security and compliance as it relates to actually stifling innovation, right? That needs to be had as well.
And the key thing there, though, when you're talking about that balance, you got to remember that what's balanced for you is not balanced for me. We
Yep.
each have to figure out what that is.
Correct.
Yep.
And JR has a good comment on impersonation, phishing, spear phishing.
Yep.
And I think it's funny, I ran this by you, but my brother was a good example of that with the, literally he got an email that had his boss's name, even though it wasn't his boss's email, that said, hey, give me a call, or text message, right? And basically then took it off channel from email, corporate email to personal cell phone, right? In that instance, asked him to go get gift cards, and he bought them. Fortunately, he didn't scratch them and send them. So his boss hit him up on Discord like the moment before he was about to send them and said, "Hey, where are you?" So Steve went dark. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, the USB port on the back of my dock here is screwing up. I had to change it.
The large, I mean, my observation is the large majority of attacks nowadays are financial extortion. They're just trying to get money, is the majority of what I would say I've seen, which is the biggest impact, right? And I think ultimately that's the majority of the goal for most people. There are other reasons why, but that's the biggest common theme between ransomware, phishing attacks, and other sorts of things, right? Is the monetary gain.
Yep.
All right, we have 4 more minutes. So any last comments or questions or thoughts before we wrap it up?
You want a spooky number that's not public yet that I can release just because?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it 13?
No, it's not. It's
Oh.
not 13. It's much bigger than 13.
Oh, that's a spooky number though.
From 2018 to 2020, there were 10 billion credential stuffing attacks in the commerce, like retail, travel, hospitality sector. 90% of those attacks targeted retail.
Oof.
Ooh.
Oof.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. I remember like I didn't
coming out later. Later this month.
that's it. Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's kind of interesting just from like I really joined the industry in 2012 when I joined Duo, right? And I think it was 2013 the Target breach happened. But before that, nobody cared about security. I mean, the joke to me was, why would you go to a 2-factor company? Nobody cares about security. And at the time, like managed service providers would have a shared credential, and it would be the managed service provider name. The company no longer exists, so I could probably say their name. But they would literally substitute an the E with a 3 and an @ with an A, and that was across 500 customers, right? And so Bill says not surprised, right? But that's a little bit of the reality in which like 8 years ago, most people lived in. And Scott's saying seeing a lot of scams from SendGrid, which is pretty common. And then the question around any thoughts on certificate transparency logs for phishing detection filtering from Ryan.
I feel like I looked into that a while back and I cannot remember what I found out.
I think that everyone should stop using email. Cool. Hey, well, I think a few things. I'll wrap it up. First off, Steve and Amanda, thanks for your time today.
Very well.
Talk about remote attacks. Yeah, it was awesome. Fun to talk about some of the different things we're seeing and some of the things people can do from a prevention standpoint. I think next week we're taking a break for a week, and then the following week we're going to have Matt and Steve from Blumira, and we're going to talk about the anatomy of a ransomware attack. So that should be pretty fun. And then if anybody's interested, next week we will have a more or less Blumira product overview demonstration we'll be having on Tuesday. So hop on and join me on there. Any last thoughts you want to leave everybody with, Steve and Amanda?
Pay attention to the scanning, but don't alert on everything.
Do it, don't do it. Do it, don't do it.
Yeah, just auto block everything instead.
Anything else, Amanda?
Nope. I'm good.
You want to promote your house that's for sale?
Yes, if anybody wants a house in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, I'm almost done painting.
Buy her house. Operator,
right.
standing by.
Congrats. It's exciting news.
You can come live near me. Who doesn't want to do that? Pretty much.
I thought we were trying to get you to move to Michigan. I mean, come on.
My youngest just turned 9, so I have 9 more years before I can move.
Oh, fun. So, well, I'm looking forward to next week. Are you going to be at our outside gathering next week?
I am. I will be
All
there.
right.
I get to come to Michigan. I'm going to cross state lines. Don't tell the CDC.
Oh, you're crossing
and then
state lines?
We're not allowed to cross state lines?
No,
I don't know. Somebody told me. Somebody.
Make sure we send Steve a one of those new porcupine teddy bears.
I want to teddy bear. That'd be awesome.
So, and if anybody else on the call wants one, you're in LA, just ping us on LinkedIn. Or
We have a new mascot. Its name is Mira, and it's a little hedgehog.
And it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we got a really good question in here if we still have a second. Ryan asked, any thoughts on certificate transparency logs for phishing detection and filtering? I use those all the time to find phishing kits and everything like that. They are amazing. However, they're not a foolproof solution if that's what you want to implement to try and protect yourself from.
I'm glad you answered that, because I know I looked into it a lot, like 3 years ago maybe, and I couldn't remember what I found.
I love them. I absolutely love them. They're just not foolproof.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. All right, I have a customer call I got to hop to, so I'm gonna go. Thanks everybody for joining today. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Steve and Amanda, and we will see everybody next week and the following weeks ahead. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Ta-ta.